Just quickly, how about if the Conscious Capitalism board members just raise your hand? So if I confuse you by something that I say, then you can go to them and they'll straighten you out.
Can board member wannabes raise their hand?
Yeah. I hope that's the whole room. Great. So we are, I'm tickled to have Scott. I've known Scott for a couple of years, and he's going to tell the story of Good Place Holdings. I think you could say that you're the convener of Good Place Holdings.
The precipitating agent.
The precipitating agent. That's great. Well, so Good Place Holdings has three operating business. Meyers, which is the sort of legacy business founded back in 1965, and they manage and maintain large electrical transformers for big industrial sites. And then there is also On Now Digital, which is a software development company and has a SaaS product geared towards electrical users. And Redemptive Properties, which is a real estate management company focused on purpose or repurposing properties. So that's kind of a description of what Good Place Holdings is. I think you should tell us why Good Place Holdings is.
Okay, good. Good evening. Good to be here. Talked to a bunch of cool people before I had a chance to get up here, and missed talking to a whole lot more cool people. So
Night is young.
it seems like a great room. The night is young. I grew up in a family business. My dad started it when I was 5 years old. Started in the basement, and one thing led to another. It wasn't really my intention to work at the family business when I got out of college. I was going to read all the works of Western philosophy, comprehend them, make my notes, and then write the book that explains it all. So as soon as I graduated, I got to doing that in my bedroom at home, and my dad says, "So what you up to?" I said, I explained my program. He goes, "That's cool." He goes, "How are you going to pay rent now?" And I go, "Well, the cool thing is I'm living at home in my bedroom, so I don't have to pay rent." And he goes, "Ha, just like you guys did." And said, "No, as of you graduating college, your bedroom's now going to cost you $250 a month." Which doesn't sound like a lot, but this was 1982, so it was a little bit more, 1982. So I started looking for what kind of job can you get if you weren't really looking for a job. And again, one thing led to another. I got a job at the company working on the road, working on the transformers, 2 weeks out, 1 week off, and the weeks out were 6-day weeks, 16 to 18-hour days, whatever kind of weather it was, whatever part of the country it was, you were working outside. So I was working with these guys, and it was all guys back then, we've got some women doing that now, who had been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years. I realized these are the guys who paid my college bill. They bought my clothes, they put the food on our table at home, and I'm working with them. And they said to me, "Scotty, when you're in the corner office, remember us and how hard our lives are out here." And I assured them, "I'm never going to be in the corner office." And they looked at me and laughed, and they didn't say anything. So, fast forward 15 years, I did end up in the corner. I fought it. It was empty. I said, I'll go in any office except that one. And so I ended up in there. So really, Bill's going to ask about spiritual practices later.
Or now.
And I got a little intro to that I'll throw in later. But really, my first step on this journey was empathy, with these guys that I worked with, who were all cool guys. They worked really hard. They were fun to work with. They all were mission driven. I'll say they all are mission driven. And it's interesting, just earlier this week, we had a gathering that we call the TMI Alumni Instructor Group. And it's people who worked in the company in the 60s and 70s and early 80s. And we get together and share fellowship. There's people who were in divisions we sold off, and they went to GE and other companies. There were people who went and got other jobs, other places. There's people who retired. And there's people that I fired, that the company fired, who show up to hang out with us. They buy my beer when we're out. Because we formed this bond working together because we were mission driven on what we did. So I got sucked into the business not because transformers are very interesting, which they are. I can tell you about that, but
We'll say that for another day.
We'll say that.
We'll need a longer session.
We would. I could do a whole day seminar just on one-on-one. But it was the people that got me interested, that made me feel I need to step up into this role of responsibility that is just mine for walking into, because I knew what everyone's working conditions were. I saw how decisions that were made at the leadership level affected them, and how, again, from a leadership level where you got your plan, you're trying to execute your plan, you're looking at the income statement, I understand how decisions make sense from that, frame of reference. And then I understand what the outcome of that is in people's lives. And so that's really what my spiritual practice of empathy, which I didn't choose, I was wired with, kicked in. And that's
what about this mission orientation that you saw on the front lines many years ago? Made that a good place?
So my dad, who started the company, had this, it was a typical American startup where he had this genius idea that nobody wanted to, work with him on, so he went and did it on his own. And everyone just had tremendous respect, for my dad and for what he knew. Earlier this week, they were telling Stan stories. Mr. Meyers, I went with Mr. Meyers, this customer, that customer. So they had that respect, but he had that respect for them. He knew that their jobs were tough. He treated them like they were very important. The guys who worked on the rigs, out on the road, and that schedule that I had, they were the royalty in the group. And the salespeople all respected them. And we were saving the world's transformers, and people didn't understand that. So, but to take all that now and go back to your original question, how did that lead to Good Place Holdings? Around that, we developed a company culture that valued people, and it was my intent to make sure that the company culture ramped that up. We value people maybe more than the next guy, and you've all heard the story about the campers and the bear. You don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun the next guy, and you're good. So we were outrunning the next guy, but I was not satisfied with that. There was a whole lot more we could do. So I took where the business was when I got involved. Leadership as like the baseline. It wasn't like sitting on your laurels and going, this is good. How do we take this farther? And my older brother, who was the president for 15 years before me, he's a serial entrepreneur, and our business got to be too boring for him, so he went off and did something that was a more exciting venture for him, and that was 12 years ago when I stepped into leadership. He would do like mergers and acquisitions kind of stuff. He would see something interesting, he'd buy it. Something he wasn't interested in, could get money on, he would sell that. And I noticed that the culture that we had, that people value so much, that they come to these meetings. Quickly, I got to give this illustration. This one guy only worked for us for 3 years. He comes to all of these things, and he's just gung ho. I go, George, how many places did you work before you worked 3 years for us? I don't know, 5 or 6. I go, how many have you worked at since? 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know why. I go, do you go to meetings like this at any of those other businesses? He goes, no, why would I? It's like, I don't know, why do you come here? So it's just, the relationships we form. So when we would sell some part of the business to Safety Clean or General Electric or somebody like that, that culture disappeared instantly. And they become cogs in the machine. And so, so a couple commitments. One, I don't want to sell any part of the business off. 2, I'm second generation, and there's no third generation who's interested. And as anybody knows, M&A people are just on the prowl. Everyone is trying to grow through acquisition. And if you can fog a mirror, they're after you. And we can fog a mirror. So they call it. So I get I mean, just me. We have a president who's in operations. My real title is board chair, and I mind the president, or he minds me, or there's a mutual thing there. I get calls and emails every day of somebody trying to buy the business, and so my thinking was, how does this business go forward where we can, maintain this mission, and skipping over a lot of 5 years of researching what's a form that this could go forward with that would cradle this mission. And at the outside I said, why does anybody have to own the business? Why can't we have a business with no owners? And it's the mission. The business is all about the mission. And everyone kept saying, well, that's nonsensical, that that you can't do that, somebody has to own it. I go, why? It's just legally, somebody has to own it. Just trust us on this one. And fortunately, I had gotten involved with a couple nonprofits in town. My wife Jean and I, we got different last names. We got Oucha, she married me. I gotta live with that. I'd helped them get their 501c3 status, did all the paperwork for them, and the first step is you incorporate with the state as a C corporation with no owners. And then after you're incorporated as that, then you go to the IRS and ask, to get the 501c3 tax deduction charitable organization status. So I finally said, why can't we just do what 501c3s do? It's just you don't go to the IRS for that part. You just be an Ohio corporation, C corporation with no owners, and you pay taxes. And they said, well, you can't do that. I go, why not? Well, they said, because nobody has done this. We've never heard of anybody doing that. I got enough entrepreneur in me to go, well, don't say that. That's a reason to try it. Because nobody has done it. They're like, no, trust us on this one. No one's done this. You don't want to do this. So I said, well, here's what let's do. Let's just do that and file a tax return and see if we get arrested. So we filed a tax return. We didn't get arrested. Yes, right. We got another one going in now, so it's always the jury's on. And one of the things that people have said is, well, if you don't have that profit motive for shareholders, then the place will just fall apart. People won't work hard. But one of the things that I've always said about any of the insights or purposes or ways that I talk about managing a business, a mission-driven organization, none of them are really things that I made up. They're all things that I've seen work and go, oh, this is kind of cool. Let's do that. This works, and it takes us towards this mission. So I've just accreted, stuff that I have observed that works, and maybe what I bring is just being more curious. And one of them is, again, going back to the guys I worked with on the road, they were on a mission. When they walked into a plant, they held their head high. They said, we're from Meyers. Customers said, you guys know you know this and we don't, take care of this for us. So they had that attitude. You got to pay people right. You got to treat them right. But they weren't doing what they were doing because if they did it well, they would get a 25% bonus at the end, or they had some stock option or something. They were mission driven. I'm mission driven. The best people I know are mission driven. One of the things that we did while my brother was president, so I don't know how many years ago it was, 20-some years ago, I talked him into getting rid of commission. So for over 2 decades, we got a non-commissioned sales force, because the people who were highly commission driven did not serve our customers well. They were in it for their commission. They did not work and play well with others in the organization. Are you familiar with that? And they caused a lot of headache to the leadership who were trying to take the organization forward. While you're trying to go forward, you're like, okay, somebody tied my shoelaces together. What's this all about? Well, I talked to that customer too. We need to split the commission. I didn't talk to that customer, but their headquarters is in my territory. So you have all these internecine warfare that you got to settle. So, and all of that is not productive. It's not serving your customers better. It's not building up anybody, as who they are. So we just had a lot of people who were mission driven. and we set up an organization. We tell them who we are when they interview. So if they're highly competitive, highly money driven, they look around and go, this is not the crowd I want to hang out with. And so, I look at it as like a cell wall. A cell wall brings into the cell stuff that's healthy for the cell, and things that aren't healthy, the cell wall kind of keeps out. So, when you're clear on your values, people who align with your values show up, and people who don't align with your values, tend to stay away. So, having had that experience when people said, if you don't have this strong profit thing going to drive people, your business is going to fall apart. It's like, for 50 years I've watched it go fine without that. So that's what sort of came together to say, let's set up this Good Place Holdings. That was the legal part of it. And I could go into a social purpose, but that's a good question.
Maybe before we go to the...
Whatever you ask, I'm going to give you the answer I got you.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Just you'd be a good politician.
That's where I learned that.
So behind every conscious leader, there's some sort of personal practice in which they're working on themselves and they're trying to become the best version of themselves they can. For many people, that is a spiritual practice, and you're one of them. Spiritual practice can mean many things, from meditating to strong faith in traditional religions. Tell us a little bit about that side of you and how it impacts you, and I think to a larger degree your father lived that kind of a lifestyle too. Right.
Yeah. So we go along a lot of different ways with that. So my dad's commitment when he started the business. There were three characteristics he had when he started the business. One, he researched what do customers need. Spent a lot of time on that. Second one, he took an entrepreneurial risk. So we still take entrepreneurial risk. We try to maintain that entrepreneurial spirit. His risk was he had 3 kids. His wife was pregnant with number 4. He had no money, no customers, no insurance, and he took a second mortgage out on the house. So. You could do that in the early 60s. I don't know how many marriages you could say, honey, I'm going to take a second mortgage out. If this doesn't work, we're homeless. So it's like...
Not many.
Not there it is. Stan pulled it off. Right. Pauline stayed with him, So, and then the other one was, he goes, we're going to honor, God with this company. We're going to, live by biblical principles, and we won't be ashamed of the name of Jesus. So that was sort of his formula when he got started. And over the years, I was around a lot of people who were Christian business owners and saw how they operated and flowed. And again, they didn't want to lie, cheat, or steal. There's no amount of business that's worth lying or cheating, stealing for. And treating people with dignity and value. But again, I took all that as ground zero, not to say as long as I just keep doing that, everything will be fine. How do you go past that? And so through my own, studying the Bible and spending time in prayer and meditation, what I've come to is that I think that at the highest level description, to account for existence, which is what I was trying to do with my philosophy, reading.
In your bedroom.
In my bedroom. Yeah.
That got interrupted.
It did get interrupted, yeah. Philosopher interrupted. Is that we're created to be, we're created to receive grace and transmit grace. That's the highest level description of understanding I have, and that the purpose of grace is to build up hearts of love in us, and to build up shalom, and that our living in the world builds up shalom in the places we live. Shalom is peace, things are right, there's balance, there's health. And so we're to receive grace so that we can have that heart of love, so that we have that life of shalom to where grace is transmitted through us. And that the world is this environment, this machine, if you will, that transmits grace to us and allows us to transmit grace out to others. So everything is a means of grace. Everything is a tool that God can use in our life to build up a heart of love and a life of shalom, and shalom in the communities through us. And the definition, I taught junior high Sunday school for 20-some years. So my junior high definition of grace is when God does something for us or through us that we couldn't do on our own. And you know, one of the things that you hear from junior high kids a lot is, I didn't ask to be born. Have we all heard that? Or said that in that 13-year-old range. And we didn't ask to be born. So everything is grace. The fact that we exist is grace. The fact that we can walk around on two legs is grace. Everything is grace. But part of it is there's grace that we can seek and participate with. And the biggest thing I try to do is not play defense, because God's trying to do good for us. God's trying to do good through us. And a lot of times we're just too busy to let that happen. And you know it's grace when something happens that you never could have pulled off on your own. So Bill and I were talking about this, you know, we were out in California. After a session, we were talking about spiritual practices. I said, yo, Bill, these consciousness people remind me a lot of Baptists I grew up with. They're so into their thing. There's a very real chance you get wrapped around your own axle with your spiritual practice and not really be any good out in the world. And you just, you know, that's what I like about grace is it's not up to me. I can't do it. I can receive and let it flow through me, and that's when the really. So coming here is a means of grace to talk to the people that I've talked to. Just hearing what you guys are doing is so encouraging to me.
But Good Place Holdings is, I think in your mind, is a vehicle for that grace. You know, it doesn't exist for the benefit of shareholders because you don't have any. Mm-hmm. And your long-term vision is that it's part of sort of a positive reinforcing cycle with community. Mm-hmm. It helps to build community, helps to provide living wages, mm-hmm. which helps to build community. And it's really becomes a part of an ecosystem, or a part of, you know, fostering an ecosystem.
I got shivers just hearing you describe that. Bill, that sounds so cool. So
that's because I heard it from you.
It sounds good coming back. And I know at Epic Pie is that same kind of way too. So the words I like to use around you know, work is that you know, work is a means of grace, and I'd never turn my ring off. Work is a means of grace, and the people who have the ability to determine the aims and the methods of the organization, as I understand it, their responsibility is to handle the work environment as the means of grace that it is, which means that it's supposed to be a place where people can have love build up in their heart. People can live out their own potential, and that the work that we do makes the world a better place. And oh, by the way, as you do that, you need to make a profit. Making a profit is not the mission of the organization. Making a profit is so that we can pursue the mission of the organization. Without the profit, you know, you can't have the mission. A friend of ours in the Y says, no margin, no mission. So no margin, no mission. So that's the purpose of profit. We you know, I spend my time on three things at work. One is the board. We're building up a policy governance board so that, you know, for somebody to lead this after, you know, we're out of the way. And then with the leadership on how to manage our mission-driven organization so that it is a means of grace in the lives of the people who work for us, customers, suppliers, and that it's a tool in the community to bring about the kind of places we want to live in. I wrote a little thing, Bill, called The Nonprofit Dilemma.
You should share that with us.
Which basically does the math that you know, average individual giving is 2 to 3% of income. Average corporate giving is 2 to 3% of profits. So let's be generous and say that all businesses have a 10% net profit at the end of the year, and that they give away 2 to 3% of that 10%. It also makes the math easy. So let's be generous. Let's go to the high side. Let's say 3%. So if businesses donate 3% of their profits to nonprofits, who their job is to make the world a better place, that's 0.3% of what they do as actions are monetized. So if you monetize their activity, 0.3% of that is dedicated exclusively to making the world a better place. if the 99.7% of the rest of what they do is just even. It doesn't degrade the environment, communities, or people's lives. It's just zeroed out. We'll get better at a pace of 0.3% a year. If the economy grew at 0.3% a year, you would not have the same president next term. But we're willing to accept that with the world being a better place. And if a business is totally money driven, I wager that they're not even. They do degrade the environment. They do degrade the communities they work in. They do degrade individuals' lives, driving them. One of our units we sold to a large Fortune 100 company who shall remain nameless, who had a joking motto: if you're still married, you're not working hard enough.
Oh.
And if I said the company, you know it. They have a high profile. And they're only kind of joking. And people I know who exceed in that organization, they have a very high divorce rate. It's just open. It's just open. If you're really going to succeed here, you're going to have a hard time holding on to your marriage. So I can go way down that. So if I saw somebody reenact the founder of that corporation, and I watched somebody embody the founder of that corporation, I go, this is where it started. This guy started this thing, and here it is over 100 years later, that character trait is still in this billions of dollars organization. So I'm trying to plant a different seed. Probably won't get to be that big. That's what we're up to.
So, one of the things that I think is fundamental to your beliefs is that the mission or the purpose of the business actually has standing. It has rights.
Mm-hmm.
It should be protected. It's almost in some form a person. The citizens of Toledo voted in the last 6 months. Slavery was outlawed 100 years ago.
Yeah, here it is back.
Bill?
Bill.
The other thing I heard is that in Japan, they're starting to look at giving rights for the people who are not even born yet.
There you go. Well, that's right. That's right. Yes.
Legal footnote, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dave Nash, and I'm on the board, but I work for the dark side of the force. I'm an environmental lawyer. And this Toledo thing is very, very interesting, whether nature should have legal rights. The co-founder of the Corporate Sustainability Network that I worked with for almost 20 years now, Lisa Hong, that's a big passion of hers. Legally in Ohio, that's probably not going to go anywhere for a lot of technical reasons. But I think for this group and others, frankly, everyone on the planet, in my view, it's very important because we have lost sight about what our place in nature is.
Yes.
So just a footnote in the sales pitch, we taught about that in Cleveland Marshall last fall, so if you want to audit next semester's class, please let me know.
Well, but Dave, most laws, right, start with some small action that gets overturned, and eventually the Supreme Court rules on something. So
Funny how that works.
it's a beginning. But that's not my point. My point is, this notion of a business having a purpose is really underlies your whole theory of a company without shareholders.
Right, which is why I spend so much time on the board, because they're the ones who ultimately have that responsibility to cradle that mission and vision in the future, and they're going to hire somebody to succeed our current president, because they believe that they can carry that out. So they have to really have that, in their hearts, not just something that they heard and that are going along with Scott for.
Well, maybe we can open it up some other questions, but I think that's an interesting point. There's a book that's out just this year called The Enlightened Capitalist, which is written by an academic, so it's at least 2/3 longer than it should be.
Zing!
Dave, you'll love it because it's a governance.
Oh, cool.
It's a governance book, and it details, not exhaustively, but historically, the companies that had intentions like yours.
Yeah.
And that lasted for a while, but then failed. And inevitably, of course, the root of the problem was they were forced to go public at some point, and then money interests made them say, in any one
Here's
point
what
in
you gotta
time,
do.
stop doing that, it costs us money.
Right, right.
But I think, and then we'll turn it over, but this governance issue is fascinating, because certainly what the book implies is that's a lot of work. Because you can have a charismatic leader, which you are, which you are, and you look to be in good health, but you know,
Never know.
100 years from now you won't be here. And,
We bike in the valley, that's a dangerous proposition.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
know, anybody could take it out.
well, anyways, you might start off this. What are you doing to protect
Yeah.
this mission of the company? Because even though you don't have shareholders, I can come along and I can buy your company if your board goes along with it. And the money in Ohio not-for-profits, the money has to go to another charity. But I can
Right.
still buy your company.
Right. Yeah, so certainty is a very interesting concept. I've kind of learned that there's not a lot of certainty available to us. You know, people talk about the hand beyond the grave, you know, trying to be the hand, you know, from beyond the grave to control things. And one of my inspirations for what we now call the Good Place organization came from reading about Benedictine monasteries, which survived the fall of the Roman Empire when a whole lot of other organizations didn't. And they had three functions that were part of their organization. They had economic activity to support themselves. They didn't rely on donations. They educated their members into, you know, their form of how they operate, and then they provided service in the community where they're at. And I thought, wow, this is the perfect organization: education, economic activity, and community engagement. So I took that as my model, and so I studied how have these things, you know, functioned. So they're, you know, 1,500 plus years, they still exist. And the history of them is cyclical. They go through these periods where they get off track. And then somebody's a reformer and says, you know, this is really what our roots and values are. We need to get back on that. So they have a reforming era where they come back and they reform, they're good for a while, then they get off track. So I thought, this is likely to happen. So one of the things that I'm doing, which I was doing anyway, so this is kind of an excuse for me to indulge in this, is I'm trying to capture it in writing and have my own sort of a Rule of Benedict kind of version of document that says, here's the purpose and here's the methods, you know, for this organization. And you know, our president Dale, one of his things is, you know, Harvard started off as a seminary, and now they're anything but a seminary. Just went through the same kind of list of organizations that got off track from the founder's intention. I go, count on it. It's going to if it lasts for, you know, 2, 3, 4 generations, somebody's going to get off track. So you need to leave something that somebody can look at and go, oh, this is what we need. This is what it was. And then plus I want to get it out there so other people are doing it. It's not just us. So, you know, that DNA tries to get out in the environment for, you know, ensuring survival. So try to follow.